All right, welcome to the Explainer. Listen, if you're an Angular developer and you've ever been lost in a big application, just chasing a bug from a component to a service and back again, thinking, how did this data even get here? Then you know exactly what data chaos feels like. Today, we're going to demystify NgRx, the tool that brings some serious order to that chaos. So let's dive right in. We're going to see how NgRx gives you a crystal clear, totally predictable roadmap for all your data. It's all about transforming that tangled mess into a solid, scalable foundation that you can actually build on with confidence. Here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll look at that common problem of data chaos. Then, we'll introduce the solution using a simple bank analogy. After that, we'll reveal the crucial missing piece for any real-world app. We'll see it all come together in a login flow, and finally, we'll wrap up with why this all matters. Okay. First up, let's talk about a challenge that pretty much every developer faces as their app starts to grow. It's one of those problems that kind of sneaks up on you, and then all of a sudden, it's a massive headache. So let me ask you, does this sound familiar? Your application's data flow just feels tangled. It's unpredictable. It's incredibly hard to debug. You know, you change one little thing in one component, and something totally unrelated breaks somewhere else. Yeah, this is what we call spaghetti code. It's what happens when all your components and services are just talking directly to each other, creating this messy web of dependencies that's almost impossible to follow. Trying to figure out how a piece of data got its value feels like untangling a giant knot, and it just leads to frustrating bugs and a lot of wasted time. Okay, so how do we fix this mess? Let's bring in NgRx as the solution. And to make this super simple, I want you to imagine that your application's data is managed like a high-security, perfectly organized bank. First things first, we have the store. Think of this as the bank's main vault. And this is huge. It is the single source of truth for your entire application. All your data, which we call the state, it all is right here. No more hunting through a dozen different services to find the current user. You always know exactly where to look. Now, you can't just waltz into this vault and start grabbing money, right? No way. To change anything, you have to fill out an official request form. In NgRx, these are called actions. An action is basically just a simple message that describes the change you want to make, like, hey, deposit $100, or update the user's profile. Your action form then gets handed to the reducer, who is our meticulous bank teller. And this teller has a critical rule. They never erase the old ledger. Instead, they take the old state and your action, and they create a brand new, updated ledger. This idea of immutability is a game changer. It gives us a perfect history of every single change, which makes debugging an absolute dream. Finally, how do you see what's actually in the vault? Well, for that, you use selectors. Think of a selector as a secure, read-only monitor in the bank manager's office. It can pull out very specific pieces of information, like just the current account balance, and show it to you, but you can't use it to change a thing. And all these pieces lock together to create this beautiful, strict, one-way data flow. Data always moves in a predictable circle. A component asks for a change with an action. The reducer creates a new state in the store, and then selectors push that new state back out to your UI. There are no side doors, no unexpected shortcuts. And that is the foundation of NgRx's predictability. Okay, this bank system sounds pretty solid, right? It's perfect for managing all the data that's already inside our app. But what happens when we need to interact with the outside world? You know, like talking to a server. Right. What if our bank needs to verify a transaction with the central bank? Or in our world, what if our application needs to make an API call to fetch user data or submit a form? Where in the world does that fit into our perfect little system? Well, the answer comes down to a very, very strict rule for our bank tellers, the reducers. They must be what we call pure functions. All that really means is that they have to be predictable. For a given input, they always produce the same output. And they can't have side effects, which means they are absolutely 100% forbidden from doing things like making an outside call to an API. Their only job is to update the ledger based on the form they're given. Period. So, how do we talk to the outside world? Well, this is where NgRx effects come in. I want you to think of an effect as the bank's special communications department. It's the only part of our system that's authorized to deal with the outside world, handling things like API calls. Here's how it works, and it's pretty slick. An effect is just sitting there listening for a specific action, like a login request. When it hears that action, it basically intercepts it. It snatches it out of the air before it ever gets to the reducer. It then makes the API call. Once the server responds, the effect dispatches a new action, maybe a login success action with all the user data, or a login failure action with an error. And only those new, pure actions ever get sent to the reducer. All right, enough theory. Let's put this all together and trace the complete journey of a user logging into our application. You'll see how every piece plays its part. Okay, so watch this flow. Step 1. The user clicks Login, which dispatches our initial login action. Step 2. The login effect, which has been listening for this exact action, catches it and immediately calls the API. Step 3, the server responds, yep, we're good. The effect now creates and dispatches a brand new login success action, packing the user's data inside it. Step 4, now the reducer gets involved. It sees this simple, pure success action and updates the user in our store. And finally, step 5, any component listening for that user data through a selector instantly gets the update, and the UI changes to show welcome. Every single step is a distinct, traceable event. So after seeing all these pieces working together in perfect harmony, what's the big takeaway? What is the real power of adopting a system like NgRx?
Well, here's why it matters. First, your application's state becomes totally predictable. You always know exactly how your data is changing. Second, the flow is traceable. With tools like the NgRx dev tools, you can literally rewind your application's history, action by action, to pinpoint where a bug happened. Third, your logic is decoupled. Your components just show data and send off actions, all the heavy lifting elsewhere. And finally, this gives you a truly scalable architecture that won't crumble into chaos as your app gets bigger.
In short, you've taken that potential spaghetti code chaos and you've traded it for a clean, organized, and incredibly powerful system for managing your application's data. You've brought order and clarity where there was once only confusion. And that's our look at demystifying NgRx. So I'll leave you with a question to think about for your own projects. The next time you start a new feature or a new application, how could a structured, predictable data flow like this simplify your process and make your code that much more robust and maintainable in the long run?